If you left it to Trump, Project 2025, and all of these people, they would be happy to let that everything be decided by the market. And you know what happens when the market decides? It decides based on very shallow principles, and we all pay the price.
Welcome to the Gist on Strat News Global. I'm Ramananda Sengupta. Today we are going to be discussing the upcoming US elections, barely less than a week away. And our very, very special guest today, connecting with us all the way from New York City, is Mr. Sreenivasan, tech guru, journalist, academic, digital evangelist, who serves as digital officer for New York City, Metropolitan Museum of Art, Columbia University. I mean, I could go on and on and on, even, but I think the best way to describe him would be just to say that he's probably the best known Desi in the entire North America. Thank you so much for joining us, Sree. Thank you. It's good to see you.
Thank you very much. I have to say, my mother, there's a photograph of my mother behind me, her book, my late mother, and that's my dad. My late mother would have appreciated that introduction. She would have loved for me to be the best known Desi, but the best known Desis are not me, because you know now that we have
you are.
M. Night Shyamalan to Nora Jones to the vice president.
They don't hold a candle to you, Sree. Come on. That's not
very kind. Very kind. Great to see you, and we've known each other for a very long time.
Yeah, we go back surely a long, long way. Let's not tell people that. We give away our age.
Yeah.
So, we were thinking of doing something on the US election in India. One of most of the odds seem to be on Trump coming back. And everybody seems the odds on him winning are, and which is, I've actually heard diplomats here say that, it's good that he's coming back because we know how to deal with him now. And, Democrats were described as forked tongue, whatever, something or the other. Of course, I mean, that's one way of looking at it. What's the mood on, Desi Street, if I may call it that, in what have you been hearing?
Well, I'll first start by saying that I'm so glad to speak with you and to have an in-depth conversation about these topics. We live in a world, as you know, filled with social media and very quick, fleeting thoughts that are just jumbled together. In that world, there is certainly an idea that Trump is leading and Trump may win, but to say that it's for sure that he's going to win is incorrect. The election is very, very, very close, and it could go in any direction. There's still time. The early voting trends are actually benefiting the Democrats, but you never know what's going to make a difference in the final decision.
Yeah, it ain't over till the fat lady sings.
Yeah, exactly. So couple of things to keep in mind about the elections that I think most people don't realize. The first is that it's so close in a country of 330 million people. It comes down to just a few states, and in those states, just a few dozen votes per polling booth, basically per precinct, as we call it. So it's very, very close. And one way to think about it is in 2020, Joe Biden got 81 million votes, and Trump got 74 million votes, but 64 million people didn't vote. 64 million people didn't vote.
That's a huge number, huh?
Yeah. So how can you make a prediction on that? So the way that polling works is that it is they use technology to try to get the current best sample, as you know, and they don't always do a good they don't always do it right. They undercounted Trump voters in 2016. They overcompensated in 2020. That's why they wasn't as obvious. And also, you should know that just around the time we're talking now, in 2012, Mitt Romney was ahead.
That's
of
right.
Barack Obama in his second term, running for a second
Absolutely.
term, which so if you think about that, there was no President Romney. So if anyone says they know for sure who's going to win this election, it's just not the case. And also, just to understand the American electorate, more than 20 million people who are in the age category that voted overwhelmingly for Trump in 2016, that's the baby boomers. 20 million of them have died since the election of 2016. So
Okay.
this is a very volatile and moving electorate. And so understanding the exact temperature of where things are is very difficult to see.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of anyone who also says that Trump is more predictable, Trump is somebody you can control, in some ways they're right. Trump is someone that if you say nice things about him, he will be so happy to do whatever you want. And we know that some of the world's leading authoritarians have figured that out. And they have
Absolutely.
manipulated him in the time that he was in office. And then since then, into doing or saying the things that they want to hear. So that's the background that's worth knowing.
Mm-hmm. But even then, traditionally the sort of Indian American community, at one time they used to play both sides, of course, just to be safe. And then earlier they used to vote Democratic, but now I'm hearing that a lot of them are turning Republican. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a change in all the communities. What used to be, you could count on nearly 96% Black folks voting for Democrats. That Trump has chipped away at that number. Latinos, which is very fast growing community, that group has been chipped away at by Trump. South Asians also have chipped away. So there is certainly not the overwhelming number that was fully Democratic. That is no longer the case, and it hasn't been the case for many elections. If you look back in American history, we had one congressman in Dilip Singh Sound more than 50 years ago, and then now 60 plus years ago, and then a long gap before a series of Democratic congressmen are now there. But before that, and women, before that, there was Bobby Jindal, who was
yes, of course.
Louisiana, and then Nikki Haley, who is governor of South Carolina. These are two conservative states where brown people have become governors, and then Bobby went on to become a congressman as well, and he has sort of faded from the scene. And then you see so many other prominent South Asians who are in the news, and sometimes they tend to be Republican. You hear about them because they are very good at making noise in the right-wing media sphere, and also conservatives love promoting their minorities because there are not that many of them, so they promote the heck out of them.
Despite being rednecks, they don't have a problem with that, right? Usually, I mean, in that sense, because
Yeah.
Trump had mostly the redneck crowd voting for him.
Oh yeah, I mean, when you see the crowds, the reason why you'll see some brown people behind him, Black people behind him, is because they really want to emphasize that. But the vast majority you'll see are white Americans who are supporting.
Yeah, I mean that's there. I mean, but which takes me back to your earlier thing. I just remembered that when George Bush Senior, right? Who was that climate guy who stood against him when he was? I keep forgetting his name now. I don't remember his name.
Al Gore.
Al Gore. So I remember that on the election morning, I went to a newsstand early in the morning. We've been up all night. If you remember, Arthur Pace, late Arthur Pace. So Arthur Pace and I had done all-nighter, and we were sitting in some cafe having chili. And to me, when he said chili, I was wondering what is chili, and then he explained that it's just beans. And then the paper guys came and they put the papers into those cans, and we went out to get one, and it said Al Gore wins. And then while we were taking that paper and walking away, the paper truck comes back and they start taking over all the papers and putting it back, saying that, oops, sorry, wrong number. This guy has won. I still have that newspaper with me, which says Al Gore has won.
No, that's a collector's item, so you should keep that. So that's George Bush Jr. That was George W. Bush ran against Al Gore in 2000, and his dad George H.W. Bush ran and lost against Bill Clinton. As we know, he was vice president to Ronald Reagan. That election, as you know, was finally decided by the Supreme Court. More than a month and a half later. It wasn't until December that we had the election result for that election, and that tells you that this country, it comes down to a few votes. The interesting thing for your audience to know is that there are about 400,000 Indian Americans, South Asian votes in the swing states, and the election was decided in those states by about 300,000 votes in the last two elections. So if just the Indian American community turns out, they can make a big difference. And that's what's surprising, I think, for a lot of folks who aren't paying attention. Why does it come down to these few states? Why is it so confusing? Why don't people know? One good thing that this election is more like an Indian election is that the fact that Biden switched over, handed over the reins so late meant that it was a very short time that Kamala Harris was the candidate, has been the candidate. Even then, it was only the length of time of an Indian campaign, but less than the British campaign, the French campaign. So this is in so many ways an unusual presidential campaign.
But I was just reading this morning that there are actually fears of violence and all that in some of these swing states because Trump supporters are saying that, hey, if Trump doesn't win, we're going to beat people up.
Yeah, and that this is the brilliance of the Trump world and the folks in that is that they have kept saying there is ballot fraud, ballot problems, and they've said that since 2016, and there's almost no fraud. And when there have been convictions, they have almost always been Republicans who are doing things with the ballots. That doesn't mean that there aren't irregularities. We know that in India, anywhere in the world, there's going to be issues when something's so important. But they have made this a thing. It's the way that Trump made this idea that they're eating the dogs and eating the cats in a town in Ohio, even though the Republicans who run that town told him that that's not true. They doubled down on it. One of the things that's changed in the time that you and I have known each other and have worked in media is that there were a set of understood facts, and we worked on a baseline, and then everything else was on top of that. Now there is no fundamental understanding of what we can agree on. Is the sky blue? Are the trees green? Like all of those things are now up for everything is up for discussion. And Trump's her campaign manager famously used the term alternative facts. And as you know, there's no such thing as an alternative fact. It's either a fact or not a fact. And that's the world we live in. And this is not only Trump's fault. This is the fault of social media. It's the way that journalism has changed. It's the way that we have seen the importance of understanding and having common goals and common things that we work towards. That's all dissipated.
Now that you mentioned that, this thing about cats and people eating all that stuff, despite all the bumbling that apparently is going on in their campaigns and all that, I was frightened out of my wits when I saw that Project 2025 document. It was a huge document. But does that mean that they have some kind of a sort of a plan already in place? It's very, very deeply, very deep dive into American politics, right down to the state level, municipal level.
Yes.
Some 900 something pages I saw.
Yeah, it's called Project 2025, and it's from the Conservative Heritage Foundation. And it's Trump has denied it has anything to do with him, but everybody who is involved with Project 2025 is a supporter or has worked or has been deeply involved with the Trump administration or the Trump world. And it says things that you'd be shocked to hear, including the fact that they want to abolish the Department of Education, abolish the
Yeah.
health
It's
department. I mean,
frightening stuff, no doubt.
yeah, but no. So
It's
just
really
think about
frightening stuff.
for Indians to understand that in India, people know that government matters, that the different ministries, the health ministry, civil aviation, all of those things, railways, all of those keep India going. In America, there are upwards of 40% of the country believes that the government is bad. All government is bad. The best thing you can do is get rid of the government. And
Right.
that if you abolish the Department of Education, that's a good thing. The civil aviation ministry keeps the planes in the air, but that's the world we're in now. And they will also be involved in not allowing IVF, infertility treatments. They will police pregnancies, the things like this that in India, in the rest of the civilized world, where we know that there are certain, society, civics, social constructs that make the country run. Those are all up for debate among people among certain part of America. It's not the majority, but they're
Mhm.
the minority that's loud. And because of the disproportionate way in which American democracy works, that they could win the election, even though they're not the majority.
Wow. I mean, like I said, I was looking at the document and it scared the lights out of me, to be honest. But given all that, and you mentioned IVF and other things, also given the pro-life thing of the Republicans, how is it that in the last elections, Pew tells me that 40% of married women supported Trump, married voting women supported Trump.
Mhm.
What kind of women are those? I mean, is that just a redneck lobby, or is it? I mean, Bible thumping that belt, or what is it?
Yeah, and again, abortion being such a big topic is a surprise to the rest of the world. The rest of the world, abortion is, Bill Clinton had this good framing. He said abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. Right? It's
Yes,
a matter of the mother, the father, their doctor, their God to discuss and understand that.
right.
That I totally believe that. But here in this country, it's become a political litmus test, a political fireball, hand grenade. You can pick anything you want, and it
Hmm.
dominates the conversation. And it's hard for outsiders to understand why it is so. And the reason is that the lobby, the conservative lobby that believes in the sanctity of life as they say it, by the way, they also believe in capital punishment. And so
Of
if
course,
the sanctity of life is about the child, in those
there's a
cases, not the
contradiction there.
child, yeah, if it's actually about life, often before it's only a fetus, before it's a child, almost all it's a viable fetus before that, but they still are willing to kill a human being. In
Yeah.
Europe, as you know, Western Europe, they've done away with the death penalty, but not here. The other part is that the same people, once the baby is born, they don't care about giving them the government benefits to make sure that child grows up healthy and has a chance to thrive, not just survive. So that's that culture that's hard to understand, and then it's just taken over American culture, American politics, but America has a long history of and Americans of voting against their own interests. There's a wonderful book that's written called "What's the Matter with Kansas?" And Kansas is one of the conservative states where people are poor, and because of this culture of God and guns and abortion, what we call the culture wars, you're able to convince these utterly poor people that
Uh-huh.
they will not benefit from the government, that the issue of abortion, the rights of whether they should have guns or not, is more important than their own economic well-being. They just don't understand it. Think about a country where not everybody has health care. Millions of people don't have health care
Right.
because the right believes that government health care is bad. And so you're in this country, you're a heart attack, a cancer diagnosis, a major health emergency away from being bankrupt. It is just so hard to understand. In the West, especially the developed West, you can get healthcare. In India, you can get healthcare. There are government schemes to help, but just not here. And that's so frustrating for people to who are observers who understand the world, right? But this is the same worldview. I shouldn't only blame the Americans. Look at the Brits. They had a passport that let them work in 27 countries, and they
Right.
tore it up because they were told that somehow Brussels is contaminating their lives,
Yeah.
and they voted twice for Brexit. Now there are all these interviews, you see them on BBC all the time, people who voted for Brexit who are now wishing that they had not voted that way, right? So people vote against their own interests because they
True.
can be lied to by people like Boris Johnson, by people
Mm-hmm.
like Donald Trump.
You brought up UK as an aside. I remember there's a friend of mine called Tom Arms, who's an American, and he quickly moved and became a British citizen simply because he says the National Health Service will take care of my cancer. In the US, I can't afford it. And he's quite happy. He's I'm a British citizen now. It doesn't matter, but it's there. It's a thing. But I talking about Trump and Kamala Harris. I remember around the time that that US election I was talking about. I remember there was an interview with this astronaut Sunita Williams, who's now again stuck in space. I mean, and she's but it was a long time ago, and I remember there was this some DC, probably India abroad people keeping on saying you're Indian background, you're Indian this, you're Indian that, and finally she sort of jokingly said that I am as American as apple pie, and please don't keep harping about my Indian background. I might lose my security clearance.
Yeah.
So, of course, we tend to sort of do that. But does Kamala Harris's Indian roots have anything to do with the way the votes are going to go for her or not?
Well,
Or
I
should
think
they?
certainly lots of Indian Americans feel an affinity to her because she's Indian. But remember, Obama was half Kenyan, and we didn't spend all our time talking about his Kenyanness. It came up once in a
Right.
while, but he is half white, half Kenyan. But he was described almost always as being Black American, which he was obviously.
Mhm.
But very little time was spent about talking about Kenya. I was looking at my bookshelf. I have a
Uh-huh.
book by my friend Anupi Singla that's called "As Indian as Apple Pie." It's a cookbook, and so
Okay.
that
I'll
phrasing I
remember
thought
that.
was interesting.
I'll remember that.
So
So you're
in
saying, her Indian background is not a factor in these elections
no, I mean
or
it is
for
a
the
fact.
election
Look,
crowd.
look, the I mean, think about Shamala Gopalan, 19 years
Right.
old, comes to America, right?
Mm-hmm.
uh, Her very conservative, by Indian standards, Indian family sends
Mm-hmm.
this young girl to come to America. She does well in school. She marries a Jamaican immigrant, and they build a life for themselves. And they have these girls, Kamala and Maya Harris, and just that story, today, uh, couples that are Black and brown face societal pressure and all of that.
Right.
Imagine in the 60s what that would have been like. But
Absolutely.
the way they embraced Kamala and the amount of time she spent in India and all of that has been, I think it's been great, and it's been all documented. In fact, Donald Trump lied and said that she was only Indian until recently. She doesn't. She became
Right.
black. She was always
I
Indian,
know.
and she became black
Yeah.
only now. It's not true. Uh, Shamala raised her daughters to be black because she knew that that's how society would see them. They would not see them as Indian. They would see them as black
Right.
first, and that's what happened. But Kamala Devi Harris is, when we named our children, who are both, well, our twins are both children of of Indian Americans. We thought long and hard about the names and what how hard it would be for people to say it, and their Durga and Krishna, Sreenivasan, that
Yeah.
labels you immediately of who you are. She didn't need to name her children Kamala Devi and Maya, right? She chose to do that. So her Indianness is there, and it doesn't have to be the only thing we talk about. She has been to India. She knows India in a way that no former president of the United States would have. Even if you look at Barack Obama, who
Hmm.
he would say Pakistan if you listen to him instead of Pakistan. Why? Because he had a Pakistani roommate, and
Right.
he learned how to make dal and chapati and roti from him, and that gave
Hmm.
him just. I'm not saying that therefore he was great for Pakistan or India or anything. It doesn't matter, but just awareness over the previous 40 plus presidents who had no connection to India, who knew almost nothing about India. There's that kind of understanding, but that's not her job, and that's not who she is. She's not India's ambassador, India's
Absolutely not.
president.
Yes.
Richard Verma, who you've met, who was
Yeah.
the US ambassador to
I
India.
know. I know.
Fascinating guy. We did an interview once, the Facebook Live from inside Roosevelt House, which is the name of the US ambassador's residence in New Delhi. And I kept stumbling and saying Indian ambassador instead of US ambassador, because
Oops.
to
Okay.
this was live on TV. I kept stumbling and I kept saying, it's so hard for me to say it because I just don't expect the US ambassador to India to be Indian. In our journalism world, we used to talk about this, that one day they will send Indian Americans to cover India. And when so many
Oh.
Sengupta went
Hmm.
to do that, people were surprised. They always expected the New York Times correspondent in
Hmm.
India to be a white person, right? And so
Right.
this is all kind of to say that Kamala's job, just like so many's job, was to be an American journalist, not to be an Indian American journalist, but to be an American journalist. The Vice President Harris's job was to be Vice President of the United States. And just like
Right.
we didn't chase Obama every day asking, what are you doing good for Kenya? What are you doing good for Kenya? Same way, we shouldn't be expecting her to be doing favors for India. The world is about realpolitik, as you know better than anyone, and
Hmm.
people represent their countries and their interests. And those interests are shifting all the time, and those interests cannot be pinned down or even predicted month to month, let alone decade to decade.
Hmm. But that reminds me of something. The sort of Indian American influence, for want of a better word, because they're now at certain. I mean, for a while they've been punching above their weight, is what people would like to believe in terms of politics. Would that not have some clout in shaping policy vis-a-vis things if Harris became president?
Yeah, I mean, this is what I say. As you know, there are a lot of Arab Americans, Muslim Americans unhappy
Right.
with the
Hmm.
state of with what's happening in Gaza, as so many people are. To have that many people killed
Yeah.
almost exclusively by U.S. weaponry is very, very upsetting. And there are some who are saying, let's burn it all down and let's support Trump because we want to punish Biden and Harris today. What they don't realize is that at least President Harris, you can talk to her. She will have Muslim cabinet members, senior
Yes.
advisors, senior staff. She'll have people you can talk to. You can reason with her and her team. There'll be no such opportunity with Donald Trump. He has already said, he's a very good friend of Netanyahu. Netanyahu is doing all he can not to have a ceasefire so that he can help Donald Trump be president, because that's what will keep him in power in Israel. So that's the background, and that's what's that's what people need to understand about where the elections are going. And so how you vote matters, but who you're voting for matters as well. You know, the famous way of thinking about the Indian freedom struggle, right? Imagine if Mahatma Gandhi was fighting against a different power. The British, as brutal, as oppressive, as imperialist, as terrible as they were for India, they were fighting the British rather than fighting the Germans, right? There was some vague, not accurate, not real sense of fair play and justice and all of this stuff that British at least told themselves. And if
Right.
Mahatma Gandhi and the entire freedom struggle had been against the Japanese, had been
Right.
against the Germans, where
Right.
would India be today? What would, where would there have been a set of Gandhi was able to go in and out of jail? Would that have happened with Adolf Hitler or some other governments? No. So who you're dealing with, who your opponents are, who your collaborators are, who your partners are, matters as much as
Of course.
what you may think is it's all equal. I will say this, that there is a wonderful video that's been going around this summer by a Singapore-based journalist who says, for the Straits Times, it's a video very powerful, to camera. He says that it was Biden in that time. Whether Biden wins or Trump wins, we all lose. Meaning the world loses, because America will still be the imperialist country that imposes its will, that takes economic power out of people, all the things. And it's all true. But there is a difference in the degree of loss between the two. Ask the people of Iraq, would an Al Gore presidency have been different than a George Bush presidency? How many Iraqis may not be dead today because of that? So there is a difference. People said there's no difference between George W. Bush and Al Gore. They're both the same. People said there's not much difference between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. There is a difference. And so, yes, there's lots to dislike about America, but in the end, there is a degree of difference in what it will mean for the world. And if you care about nothing else, if you care about climate change, if you believe climate change is real, do you want the person in Washington who pulls America out of all its environmental obligations, or the person who says it's real, we must do something? Forget everything else. Forget whether they're good for India in other ways. Just this one question. If you believe climate change is real and we are running out of time to do something, we cannot afford to want in Washington the party that denies all of it.
It's interesting that you say that, because I was talking about the document Project 2025, where it talks about climate change. It says that earlier it used to be that, we have walked out because we don't need to talk to anybody else. I mean, right now they're saying that we don't need to talk to anybody. But it actually says, if I remember right, that we will let the people who come down the line, as and when this happens, we'll let their wisdom decide how to battle it. We don't need to deal with it. So drill, baby, drill is what the whole thing goes.
Yeah, and just think about the stupidity of that. To say things like, "Oh, flooding is good because you'll suddenly have beachfront property," right?
Wow. Okay,
I mean, I mean, there's a 1978 Superman movie. That's how old I am. In which the whole plot is that the bad guy Lex Luthor wants to destroy California so that inland, and he has a lot of property inland. So if California goes into the sea, suddenly he's the beachfront, right? So
Don't give
therefore
Trump ideas now.
he'd be very rich. So that's the premise of that film, and that's the world we're living in today. So it's as if you say suddenly Bangalore is a beachfront, so that's good. If the rest of India is flooded, the rest of the peninsula is flooded, that's great, because then Bangalore will become seafront. Like, it doesn't make any sense, and that's the world we are living in now.
We are running out of time, but let me ask you a question which has always bothered me. There is a stream of thought which says that one of the reasons why Trump might win is that this liberal woke business seems to have really gone to the other extreme, and people are upset with that. And they're saying that, hey, you know what? Let's go back to the good old-fashioned ways of the Republicans. Do you think that's a right assessment, that there is a pushback against this liberal, or
Well,
has wokeism or whatever gone too far?
I mean, I think that you have to think about what you understand of what is wokeism. What is, do you believe that
I don't understand
any,
it at all. I'm too old
yeah,
to understand all that.
no. So let me explain what this, just in simple terms, without, I would be accused of being woke, but I don't think of it as a bad thing. I mean, if a liberal is somebody who believes that the world is unjust, unfair, we need to repair the damage that's been done, we need to treat everyone equally, we need to give a leg up to people who have disproportionately suffered. That's what wokeism is. It's saying that you're awake and noticing the problems around you. It's like, look at India now. Today, everybody in every political party will tell you they agree that British rule was bad for India, and that in recent years it's been much stronger, the awareness of how bad British rule was. Of course, we knew it was bad, and that's why we overthrew them. But how bad it was, in William Dalrymple, Shashi Tharoor, all of these books have come out, and now we really understand even the fact that India was once the richest country in the world
Right.
before
Yeah.
the British, and then became one of the poorest because of Britain. All of that is India getting woke, India waking up and understanding that you're a frog in a pot, and it's not that it's warmer than you remember. It's that you're in a pot and and it's on fire. That's what being woke is, that you are aware of systematic and systemic problems. Republicans will tell you there are no problems in this country, that everybody can just pull themselves up by their bootstraps. They don't need governmental help, because the fundamental difference between India and America is that 40% believe government is bad. In India, whether you're conservative, liberal, progressive, any of those things, you understand that government has a rule. You want those planes to stay in the air. You want the railways, trains not to crash. That's what the
Right.
government does. If you left it to Trump, Project 2025, and all of these people, they would be happy to let that everything be decided by the market. And you know what happens when the market decides? It
Oh,
decides
yes.
based on very shallow principles, and we all pay the price.
Absolutely. I agree with you on that. And we seem to have run a bit out of time, but I would like to see you again post the election to see whether we got things right or wrong, you know. So
I'll be honored to come back. I will say, on election night, don't just watch for the presidential race. This country is run not at the presidential level, it's run down ballot, as we call it. The other races, the congressional races, the senator race, the Senate races, governors, all of that matters as much as the presidency. So
I, I,
check that
I
out.
know we're short of time, but you just reminded me of something which I forgot to totally ask you. I read somewhere that abortion is put on the ballot, apparently on the presidential ballot. What exactly does that mean?
That just means that there is Donald Trump. The lie that Donald Trump has said is that this is because he wants to give this back to the states, that everybody wanted individual states to decide
Right.
what happens. In this case, which is not true. The law has been the same for 50 plus years, and people
Right.
were happy with that. Generally, the conservatives were not happy with that. They want to end all abortion, and therefore, if Kamala Harris wins, she will make sure she will sign into law, codify the right to abortion, whereas Donald Trump will make sure it's gone. That's what they mean by that. So when they say something's on the ballot, it just means that you could say, and the environment is on the ballot.
Okay.
Gun control is on the ballot. Just again, to an Indian audience, the fact that this country, there are 3 guns for every person, and mass shootings are routine, like more than 1 a day on average, is unbelievable. In any other country, they would have solved that problem long ago, as they did in Britain, in Australia, and now today in America, guns are a bigger problem than they've ever been.
True. Very true. And I think that's also trickling down to India now. People want to have guns. Scary thought again.
Unbelievable, scary, very scary.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Sree. And like I said, I'm already booking you post the elections, to see what we got right. And I look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. That was the one and only Sreenivasan talking to us about the upcoming elections in his own irrepressible and unique manner. I do hope you enjoyed this particular edition of The Gist, and I look forward to having you with us again. Till then, this is Ramananda Sengupta signing out.